Check, check, check. Hello, friends. Welcome. Food is being served, so I'm going to go ahead and pray, and then we'll get started with food. Dear Heavenly Father, God, we just thank you for tonight. We praise you for just this opportunity to come together as leaders in this church to learn something new, to bond together with our teams. God, I just ask that you would bless our conversations tonight, bless those who are speaking tonight, and God, I ask that you would bless this food to our body. In Jesus' name we pray, amen. All right, so you guys can go ahead and exit out into the lobby. We have 2 lines on either side of the table to grab food.
Hi, everybody. We're going to get started in just a minute, but I want to let you know there are desserts out there if you want some desserts. And also, if you have not filled out one of these little tickets at the door, please go fill one out, as it'll be a way to win a prize later on. And feel free to use the conversation bingo if you want to get to know your neighbor. Hi, everyone. We're going to be getting started in a minute. Hello? Hello? It's a handheld. Testing. Hello? Welcome. Hello. Am I on? There we go. Okay, we're going to be getting started here, but feel free to grab yourself a snack, run to the bathroom, do what you need to do. But first, I just wanted to say thank you all for coming. Thank you all for serving with our kids and with our youth. We did a tally of how many people in our church volunteer regularly with kids from 0 to 18, and we have over 100 people who actively work with our kids, which is awesome. So thank you guys for being here. We are just going to be doing, first off, a quick safety review. Last year we got really heavy into our safety policies. This year we're going to do a quick review, and then we're going to give you some more skills and practical wisdom that can help you guys as you're serving and ministering to our kids. So with our child safety review, first off, I wanted to read you guys a quote, and this quote says, "One of the biggest mistakes that I've seen among those who have a heart for the lost is that they don't see the children in their own church as lost. Every child, even the cute ones in our Sunday schools, need the gospel. Our goal is not just to get the children into church, but into Christ. Let's be sure to be missional with those closest to us, the ones already within our church walls." Now, this is our missions field, and you guys are all missionaries to these kids who are hearing these Bible stories for the first time, hearing the truth about who Jesus is for the first time, and understanding it and applying it to their young lives so that they can go forward with Christ. And that is the reason why we're all here tonight, and that's the reason you guys all show up consistently and minister and be with these kids. And in this process, first off, thank you. You guys are being witnesses for the kingdom of God, which is incredible. And we want to do the best we can possibly do. And one part of that is that we have a great responsibility to keep our kids safe. We all agree on that. We want to keep our kids safe and have this a happy and welcoming environment and a safe environment. We need you guys to be the eyes and ears for our kids. And one part, as we just quick go through our safety policies, is that we ask that you watch for signs of child abuse and neglect. You guys are the ones interacting with these kids. If you see anything that doesn't quite seem right, please, if you see something, say something. And we ask that you go ahead and tell two. So tell a pastor, a ministry leader, a deacon, tell at least two people of what you've seen, even if you're not 100% sure. Just tell two people so that they can check into it, because we want to make sure all of our kids are safe. Another area of general safety is that for when your kids are getting picked up from your classrooms, we ask that if they're in grade 5 or below, that the parents themselves come to the classrooms or come to the check-in station and collect their kids personally. So we don't just let the kids say, well, we're done, and send them out the door, because if we lose a child or just appear to have lost a child because we're not sure exactly where they went, it's not a very fun situation, and parents freak out. So just keep the kids who are 5th grade and below with you until they are appropriately checked out. One more note of safety is the rule of 3. We ask that in all situations, you do not be alone with a child. So if it's just you and just the child, that is just 2, and we ask for a rule of 3. So you can be alone with a group of children, that is acceptable, and you and one other leader can be alone with one child, that is acceptable, but we don't ever want there to be a you said versus she said, one-on-one, that we're not sure what happened. And we also don't want there to be an air of secrecy in anything we do. So we ask that if it's just you, grab someone else, grab a group of 3 so that there's no air of secrecy. And we also ask that if you're texting or messaging a minor, that you would include one other person in your message. And often that could be a parent or another leader, just so there's no semblance of secrecy, and we're just being very inclusive in that. In a note of that, it's not fun to teach by yourself, and sometimes that does happen, that it's just you with a group of kids, which is acceptable, but we ask if you think of someone who could possibly teach with you that you would enjoy teaching with, recruit them and say, hey, check this out, because I think you would do really well in here, and then we can teach together. So if you think of anyone that you could teach with, that's awesome, because teaching by yourself, not always the most fun thing to do. But in any situation, we have an awesome team here, our Shepherd's Ministry team, that are always on site during our Sunday and Wednesday night programs. They make sure that our environment is safe and secure. They are all first aid, AED, and CPR trained. They can be contacted very easily with one of the walkie-talkies that should be in your teaching area. And this walkie-talkie, you can call them if you lost a child, if you need a parent, if the sink in your room is overflowing, if you have a kid who scraped their knee and they need a Band-Aid and you can't go get one. If for any reason that you're like, I could use some help right now, go ahead and grab your walkie-talkie, talk to the shepherds, and they will send someone to you. And even if you're like, I don't know who I need, but I need someone, they can go find that someone for you. We also ask that if anyone is injured in your classrooms, it doesn't matter what it is. If it's bigger than a paper cut, per se, we ask that you just notify a shepherd, tell them what happened, because we've had on occasion a child go home and they had a giant bruise across their forehead, and the parents are like, what happened? And the kid's like, I don't know. And then there's a whole confusion of what actually did happen. And so if you notice anything, just go ahead and tell the shepherds. They will keep a record of it, and they'll make sure anyone who needs to know gets told. Also, just a reminder that if there is any emergency in any case, we ask that you stay with your children and you make sure that they get safe. So if you're downstairs cooking on the stove and then suddenly it lights on fire, your goal is not to run and get a fire extinguisher, leaving all the 5-year-olds to play by the oven. Your goal is to take the 5-year-olds with you, get them to safety, and one of our shepherd's team will come over and deal with the fire and deal with the fire extinguisher and anything that needs to happen. Talking about in a case of emergency, if there happens to be a tornado, just reviewing what needs to be done. If there happens to be a tornado or severe weather, we have lots of rooms, primarily in our lower level, that are marked as tornado-safe rooms. They are the rooms without windows, so please gather your group and go to there. If we have a fire drill suddenly go off, we ask that you take all your children and make sure you have them all, and exit through the front way, through whatever your nearest fire safety exit is, and go to the northwest far corner of the parking lot. And that's where everyone will gather together, the northwest corner. But the one note is if there happens to be an active shooter or a situation of dangerous means of going through the building, we ask that in that situation, we don't want the whole congregation exiting out into a giant open parking lot. Instead, our location will be, instead of the northwest corner, we're going to the opposite side, which is the fire department right down there. So we ask that you take a back exit, if it is safe to exit your room, back exit from the back of the building to the fire department right down there. If you take a look on your tables, you all have a emergency exit plan. Please take one of those and just pass it around. Take note of where do you normally teach in this building, and where is your nearest safety exits, where can you go for a tornado safety zone, and where are your fire extinguishers, where are your first aid kits and take a look at those and then pass it on to your neighbor so that you have a little refreshed memory. If for any situation you need to leave your room for an emergency, we ask that you take two things that will be very helpful to you. One is this walkie-talkie, a walkie-talkie that you can be in communication with everyone. And second is, if you have one in your room, this is the primary reason for these, is a clipboard or your attendance sheet. If you have all of the kids written down every week, please take that with you or take a picture with you so that you don't get out there and say, did we have 5 or 6 kids today? I don't know. And which was the 5th or 6th kid? I don't know. So take your attendance sheet, take your radio, and last note of if something happens and we need to evacuate the building for any reason, we ask that you make your first priority the kids in your classroom. So don't try to say, oh, my helper will get the kids. I'm going to run and go find a parent. I'm going to go and try to find my kids and try to run around the building because then we're running like crazy without a plan. So we ask that you take the kids assigned in your classroom and exit out safely into the group, and then we will sort out where everyone is. If you want a full review of all of our safety policies, because that is super fun to you, if you want to review it all, we do have some printed out packets on the back table that will run through all the details, and we can even do a one-on-one review meeting if you wish. We can do that, so go ahead and grab one from the back table if you want. But I just want to remind you guys that you are so important to us. You guys are the hands and feet of Jesus to the kids and teens in this building, and we just want to thank you so much. And I want to pass it over to, we actually have Hannah coming up, and Hannah is going to be giving us some practical wisdom and skills that we can use in this church building as we engage with families and kids with special needs. Yes.
Do we have a plan for over at the school with teaching rangers where we're supposed to go for NATO or anything?
Do I have a shepherd in here that has that answer?
Actually on the front circle. So we get out of the building to the front circle if there's an active shooting, we obviously have to go back to the building. I am in the annual works of getting something actually written out. So everybody can have that plan in terms of something does happen. Everybody has that same plan.
Hi, I'm Hannah Tuimala, for those of you who haven't gotten to meet me yet. And before I get started officially, I just wanted to let you know why we decided to make Christian Life our church family. Our family, you can go to that next slide there. My kiddos, they're my beautiful kiddos. That's Mr. Chuck in the background, you can ignore him. So our family is made up of, from foster care adoption. Our kiddos all came to us through different circumstances at different ages. And because of that, we have some unique needs. And the church that we were attending is a tiny little Bible church in Random Lake. And we love that church. And it was just so special to us. But unfortunately, because of the shutdowns and the resources, we were meeting at the high school, and we didn't feel like we had a home. My daughter, who is on the autism spectrum and has some sensory needs, couldn't handle meeting outside. She didn't want to go to church anymore. She just outright refused. And I'm like, I'm not okay with this. And so we decided to try something else. It was fair weekend. And I knew that this church existed because I knew Don Holycross, and I knew Abigail, and I knew a couple other people. And I knew Jeff Woodward. He and I went to college together, and I was like, okay, I know it's a biblically sound church. I know they're a spirit-filled church, safe to try. And we came, and the kids felt safe. And so I felt safe. And if that was the only reason that the kids liked children's church, I wouldn't have come back. But I knew it was a biblically sound church where our family was getting fed. So our family has some unique strengths, unique hobbies. If anyone ever needs a board game recommendation, we have a collection of over 500 board games. That's our family's thing. It's what we do. So we also have some unique challenges. So you can go to the next slide there. So here's some statistics about what the reality is of kids who might be coming into Christian life. 1 in 36 children in the United States are diagnosed with autism currently. That's the current statistic. In our family, it's 2 out of 4. 10% of school-age children are diagnosed with ADD or ADHD. In our family, it's 50%, 2 out of 4. 20% of the American population is dyslexic. Where are my dyslexic people out there? There's more of you. In our family, it's 50%. It's estimated that 6 to 9 out of 1,000 school-age children have fetal alcohol syndrome or fetal alcohol effect. That happens when a child is exposed to alcohol in the womb at certain critical stages. In our family, it's 1 out of 4. 6 out of every 1,000 live births are diagnosed with neonatal abstinence syndrome after being exposed to opioids in the womb. In our family, it's 1 out of 4. In the US, 3 out of every 1,000 children will experience an out-of-home placement at some point before they turn 18. In our family, that's 100%. So that could mean foster care, kinship care, which means going to live with grandma or auntie. That could mean juvenile detention. That could mean a lot of different things. So that's the reality of our family. Now, I'm talking about our family specifically because that's what I know. But when I asked my friends in the special needs community, what do you want the church to know about how you can be loved? I'll be weaving some of that into that. Because I don't have experience with things like cerebral palsy. I don't have experience with things like spina bifida or what it could be to be more physically challenged. I know the emotional and the neurological issues, but I don't have experience with the other things. So, next slide, please. So why does this reality matter to Christian Life Church? Oh, by the way, all these little images that I have on there, they're all images that I found on the Facebook page from old sermon series. I thought that was pretty cool. In order to love families with the love of Christ, we need to do what Jesus did and meet them where they are at and meet their needs. Right? Jesus never said, come to me when you have that fixed. He met the needs first and ministered to them with their needs. Next slide. This is the reality of the families we want to love, to connect with, to grow with, and serve. Families with unique and complex needs are likely at some level of survival mode. They might have gotten really used to that survival mode, but they're probably in some level of survival mode. And they don't always know how to ask for help or how to answer well-meaning but vague questions like, let me know if you need anything. What does that mean to a mom who can't figure out how to take the next breath without worrying about where her kid is at? Families with special needs are less likely to attend church and more likely to experience divorce. They're more likely to experience homelessness and often feel isolated and alone. The divorce rates for families with special needs kids can be as high as 87%. These families need Jesus. Within the church, special needs families want to experience the life of the church, but they don't have the time or energy to participate in ways that they feel are valuable. That doesn't mean that they're not valuable. It's just that we don't always know if what we have to give is enough. Because planning is really hard. Because knowing what happens next, not knowing what's going to happen next, means that, oh shoot, I committed to XYZ, and now I can't make it. And now I disappointed someone because my kid needed me. I didn't think I was going to get emotional about that. Next slide. Often children with behavioral needs feel isolated and misunderstood. Creating a safe, caring, structured environment will help the child to thrive at the same time as being supported in the way that keeps everyone around them safe. One of the moments that I felt safest here was when my daughter was having a rough morning. She came to church, win number 1, but she didn't want to go into children's church. And I said, okay. And I was kind of looking around. Okay, what do we do next? What do we do next? Okay, there's a spot there where you can color. Do you want to go color? I don't know. Okay. Do you want to go do this? I don't know. And when she gets in that frozen state, it's about, we call it flipping the switch. And Pastor Laura came up and said, oh, she's fine. I got her. I'm like, you sure? She's like, oh yeah, she's good. And I come back later and Pastor Laura said, she went in. I'm like, really? She went in? And I didn't have to be called? Okay, they've got me. Like, that was such a huge moment for me because there have been times when that has not been the case. When people don't understand that she needs that time and space, and she doesn't know what she wants. She doesn't know what she needs, but for an adult who loves her to give her that space and just say, I love you. We've got you. You're not expected to do anything right now. The whole point of you being here is so that we can love you. So it says a crisis plan helps volunteers know what to do in the case of a meltdown. And this is where Naomi and I were working on this of what could we write down so that if my daughter or my son comes into a situation where they're like, oh, we're starting to see X, Y, and Z happen, and a volunteer has never encountered that before, they can go, okay, what's the next step? So that's something that we're going to be working on is how, because children with autism often have meltdowns where you don't see the first couple steps until it's too late. So that's something we're going to be working on. Every child has unique needs, and some require more proactive work. Why don't we just treat them like every other kid? Kids are just kids, right? Yeah. They're all image bearers of the Holy God. Absolutely. But some of them need special, unique intervention so that they can be who they were created to be in an environment that wasn't created for them. Does that make sense? So yes, my son is loved and he is valued, but if he doesn't have boundaries to feel safe, then he's not going to know how to be safe in that environment. And so he's not going to be able to thrive when everyone around him expecting to be the same age as the kids around him, when inside he's like, I don't know how to do that. Next slide. Just because a child looks normal on the outside doesn't mean they don't have complex medical or behavioral needs going on underneath. And this is why we have things like allergy alerts, right? Like, you don't know from looking at a kid whether they have a severe peanut allergy. Well, it's the same thing. You don't know by looking at a kid that they have sensory issues or that they have type 1 diabetes or whatever. You need to know what is unique about that child so you can serve that child. So this is from a parent's perspective. It's hard for us to trust our children with others because we don't know if their needs will get met or if we can adequately communicate what their needs are. When Jen and Christine gave my husband and I the first date night we had had in 2 years, I watched my cell phone until I realized I didn't need to watch it anymore because they had my back. Because the last time we had left our child with 2 babysitters, my daughter got hurt. Because I thought I had communicated needs well, and apparently I hadn't. That's really, really hard to know. Did I adequately prepare the people caring for my children for what they actually need? Because as a mom, you don't want to talk down about your kid. You don't want to be like, oh, but maybe they'll do this, or maybe they'll do that. Or if this happens, you want to let them be kids, but it's exhausting to think out every single scenario. And then if that scenario happens, you feel horrible because you're like, oh, I didn't know. I tried, but my brain can't always do that out. So it's exhausting. Loneliness is very real for special needs families, for the parents and for the kids. My son wants so badly to fit in, but he doesn't feel like he knows how. And even though everyone else is like, oh, he's great, we have so much fun with him, in his mind, he's going, this is a lot of work to appear like I am fitting in with the people I want so desperately to be my friends. So children might need coaching on how to interact with other children. This can go from either side. A child might need help connecting with a special needs kid. Oh, he really likes trains. Go talk to him about trains. That's a really good way to make friends with him. Or it might need to be on the other side. Oh, you want to be friends with them but don't know how. Why don't you try saying this? It sounds so simple, but like, hey, can I teach you a knock-knock joke? Go tell them that knock-knock joke. Connection made. They need help connecting to each other. Kids in a wheelchair. I have a friend that has 3 beautiful triplets that were all born with some level of cerebral palsy. And she told me, she said, I wish that kids would just come up and ask about her wheelchair. Because she loves that thing. Go ask her, tell me about what this does. And she'll tell you, oh, I can make this go this way. And she wants to be connected with. We get so afraid that we're like, oh, but that embarrasses them or that's rude. They want to be connected with, especially with kids. Otherwise, they feel like they're being outcast, but they want to connect with each other. We're made to connect with each other. A couple more things. Next slide. I already talked about that. Making commitments is hard to do because good days and bad days are unpredictable. If you don't know how to help, ask. But if you ask, be willing to listen. Because sometimes our answers are not easy. When our older 2 boys that are grown and gone now, we had a crisis happen. And my son destroyed a lot of things in our house. And I was left alone with the aftermath. And I called my church and asked for someone to come help, and no one came. My mother-in-law called to our church and said, can someone go help? And no one came. It's hard to show up for people in hard times, but that's when the love of Christ shines through, is when those hard moments are seen. That family of God showed up for me when I had nothing to give. Because then, guess what? Then we can give back when our tank has been filled up. And we want so desperately to do that. But it's really hard when your tank is empty. Little things can make a big difference and can give us just enough breath to keep going. So where can my child thrive? Can she do puppets? Yeah, she can. Because my daughter is great at talking through stuffed animals. If you ever see Ari and she has a stuffy with her, ask her what the stuffy's name is. She can tell you. She can tell you the personality and the backstory for every single stuffed animal she brings to church. And she can preach the love of Jesus through puppets. Where can they serve? Can my son, who's autistic, has a great attention for detail, sort things and make things really neat and tidy? Oh yes, his OCD comes in handy at times. He's really good at that. Can he show the love of Jesus through serving in that way? Yes, but only if he's asked. because he needs to know that he belongs and that he matters. Can my ADHD boys do things really fast if given structure and direction? Yes. But they need to know that they can share the love of Jesus that way. And where can a mom and a dad with special needs kids serve? Sitting with people and talking to people, encouraging each other. So I just want you to think about that. Again, this is my experience. And I love sharing our family's story because my kids know that they are loved. They know that they're chosen. That's the amazing thing about an adoption story, is my daughter has a passion for knowing that kids are chosen and that they can serve with a purpose. These kids were not accidents. They were not just happenings. They were made for a purpose. And you guys get to show them what that purpose is. You get to show them they were not accidents and they were not mistakes, that they were shown, they were brought here to Christian Life Church in this community for a purpose to show others the love of Jesus. So give them a chance to do that because they will surprise you. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Hannah, for sharing your story with us. Appreciate you. Okay. Thank you. All right, you guys. Well, tonight we have a special guest speaker here tonight. We have Pastor Steve Tripp, who is our district youth director. To tell you a little bit about Pastor Steve, he and his wife, Christy, have been married for 30 years and live in Wapaka, Wisconsin. They were youth pastors in Missouri for 4 years and have spent the last 26 years in Wisconsin. During these years in youth ministry, he coached many different sports in the area schools. Steve was elected as the district youth director for Wisconsin, Northern Michigan in April of 2008. It is his dream to help students and youth leaders see their God-given dreams become reality. He has a heart to invest in people and see them connected with others in ministry. Steve has experienced firsthand what can happen when someone believes in you and gives you an opportunity. Between his parents and coaches growing up, Steve had support, encouragement, and opportunity. As a result, he has seen what can happen when you believe in people and help them discover their role on the team. Now he is committed to creating this environment for the students and leaders in the Wisconsin Northern Michigan district. Steve and Christy feel very privileged to be a part of an amazing team and look forward to the future. And Pastor Steve, we are so excited that you are going to be sharing with us tonight. So come on up and share your heart with us.
Thank you very much. And my wife and I are empty nesters now. So those of you that know what that's about, I don't know what the hesitation was on that. It's the best time of my life. I'm just kidding. We miss our kids, but they come by still and come see us. And now we're brand new grandparents. We have like a 8-month-old little girl. So Nora is now all that matters. All the kids know they've moved to the back of the bus, and that's okay. It's an honor to be with you, and I'm impressed by the detail that you guys take and pay attention to for the safety of students and for the ministry to students and families in your community. And I say that probably because I'm old enough to remember what it was like when I was a kid, where we left the house on our bikes, and usually it was dark, and then we're like, oh, we probably should go back home now. You know, like it was, how many remember those days, right? Where it would be like, be home in time for dinner. We're not really worried, right? I don't know if that's the good old days or not, but it's certainly different days now, right? So if you grew up in that, that's why I married Christy, to bring some balance into my life. She's a first grade teacher, rule follower. She knows all of the things that you guys have gone through, which has helped our kids make it all the way to graduation and even to life where they're at right now. I've always had people that help me with this because it's not my nature. My nature is like, what's the worst that could happen? You know, I'm that guy. And so God has put me around people that are really great to help me, and I'm like, I want those same results, but it's just not how my brain's wired, which is also why I work with Mark Kilcoyne in the district office. So, like, he handles all that stuff, and I'm like, yep, we're going to do what you said, you know? So that's just kind of, we all have our own personalities and whatnot, but I want to say sincerely, I think speakers sometimes when they come in and leave throw around things, but I mean this. The heroes to me are the people that serve others in the church, and that's you. Especially I have for children and youth, that's a real big thing for me, that you would give of your time for a variety of reasons, but I'm believing that God has asked you and you've responded obediently saying, yes, I will serve the next generation. So I want to say thank you for that. That means the world to me. Just by way of connection, when I was growing up, I grew up in a small town in northern Minnesota, and I mean small town. So there's like 1,500 people in our town. So that qualifies as small pretty much everywhere you go. But where we were at, we were the county seat, so we were the big town in that farming area. So like we had the courthouse was at our town, and you know we didn't have any lights, but we had more stop signs than every other town. So there was that. But I was this. I didn't start there. My parents were pastors, and then we were missionaries in Vietnam in the years of 1973 and 74. For so many history buffs know what my childhood was a little bit like. And then we came back to Minnesota and then grew up in northwestern Minnesota, just next to Canada, North Dakota. Grew up in this really small farming community where you didn't really belong until you'd been there at least 10 years. Then they learn your name about that time. That's kind of the community that I grew in. And I grew up in a time where it was great because that was when athletes ruled the world, right? And so in grade school, I was just such a good athlete. I'm like, I love sports. My dad loves sports. This town loves sports. You know, the movie Hoosiers, if you remember that, the lights going from town. That's where I grew up, and I'm like, I had visions of what life was going to be like through high school for me, right? And then it was my 8th grade year, and I had started on every team I played, and then I got to, and basketball was my favorite sport. And I remember all of a sudden, I'm like, we got to our first game, and for the first time in my life, I wasn't starting. And I just kind of was like, what happened? Did I do something wrong? I was so in my own self, I was like, doesn't coach know like I'm a legend in the making here, right? How can he miss this, you know? And all of a sudden I started realizing, and my friends would kind of tease me, I was a bit of a late bloomer. So I was probably 5'3" on the basketball team in 8th grade. You don't have to know a lot about basketball to know why I was sitting on the bench on that team, right? And so I tell that story because it's like this humiliating kind of moment where what I felt on the inside about my abilities and what I could do wasn't being realized by others on the outside at all. And I was kind of wrestling with this thing, right? And I tell this story from time to time, just in a room like this especially. The varsity coach took notice of me, and he challenged me. He said, I'll let you practice with the varsity because I see something in you, and I think if you work hard, you can be our point guard for the future. Now, mind you, I'm 5'3", okay? So, and it's not like my dad was 6'7", and he's like doing the math, like this kid's going to grow. It wasn't the case at all, But that's all it took for me to go, hey, somebody saw what I felt was inside me that was limited because of what was actually being presented outside of me, right? And then I will tell this obligatory story that I do to kind of embarrass myself. So that year I practiced with the varsity, and you know those kids, right? The kids that at the end of the game, when you're up by enough or you're down by enough, then, hey, Tripp, and you go check in, and you haven't been warmed up. You're freezing cold, and you go in for your seconds, and that's kind of how it goes. Well, we played this team from North Dakota, and this was a huge deal. We had a really good basketball team, but they were like top. I think they were ranked number 3 in North Dakota, which it's okay. We can make fun of North Dakota, right? Like this, whether are they 4 schools over there, so you're 3rd out of 4th or whatever. But the real deal was they had a 3-point line, okay? And so they were all just like, oh, yes, I'm old enough that we didn't play with a three-point line, and until after I graduated. So we go over there, and all of our guys are chucking up threes, and we're losing terribly. Halftime, I had the old coach that loved me. He's like, he's throwing water bottles. He's saying words you're not supposed to say. At least I didn't think you were supposed to say those words. Anyway, so I get in the game, and way ahead of schedule, right? It's not at the end of the game. It's like during the real game part of it. We're down by quite a bit. But this is, so as you might have guessed, I was a child of the 80s. So the shorts back then, do you guys remember what those look like? Okay, so picture those. And they had rules back then, like you had to tuck in your jersey into your shorts. So picture a 5'3" kid, jersey tucked into his shorts. They're short shorts. Guess where that jersey's going, right? Out the bottom of those shorts. And I get up to go into the game, and I swear to you, this is the sound I hear. And it's all the moms in the stadium are like, "Aw," like the biggest pity. Isn't that cute? For an 8th grade, in my mind, man, it is not how you want to build your career. It's not what I saw happening. Coach looked like a genius. The next year I grew 6 inches, which helped a little bit with that. But I say that story to tell you what's always on the inside isn't what always gets on the outside. And all it took was one man to come up to me and say, I see something in you that, yes, I did grow, but the reality is I would have ran through a wall for that person because he was the only other person who saw what I felt was inside of me. I bring that to this moment to challenge you. Before we even get into this, I'm saying the challenge I have for you is you're around children, you're around youth that might portray something very different than what's going on inside. And I believe it's the work of the Lord in us to see them as he sees them, not as only if they're trying to portray to us as well. I hope that makes sense to you. If not, we're going to go to a scripture that I think will maybe tie this together. John chapter 4, and it's the story that I have different stories throughout the year that I'm like, this has always been part of my view of God, my view of people. It's the story of the woman at the well. A lot of people leave out, or they'll stay the Samaritan woman, but those are key definitions to this story, right? So I'm in a church crowd. I would normally read through this. I'll just tell you, basically, it's Jesus coming. He's tired from walking, right? He sits down by a well, kind of a famous well, as we know, right? It's the middle of the day, and he lets the disciples go into town because they need to do the work of getting some food and taking care of some of the business. And then this Samaritan woman comes to the well. Now, if you know anything about this, pastors are very good at telling us there's a reason you don't go during the middle of the day when it's the hottest to draw water, right? She was going to this well because she wanted to avoid people, and she runs into Jesus, who's, Samaritan Jew. This is not people who get along even. So she's not wanting to be around anybody, let alone somebody who she's assuming would be racist towards her, right? So then they have this interaction where he asks her for water, right? Now, let's be honest. How many of you in here, and I don't mean just ladies, but anybody, if you're sitting here and you've brought everything to do your work to get the water, which is work, this stranger who isn't like you, doesn't like you in your mind, says, hey, can you get me some water? It'd have to be our best day, right? Probably. And they get into this whole dialogue and this whole conversation, and as we know, he starts talking about a different type of water completely. And she's like, what she was drawn to was, yes, she wouldn't have to do that work of going to get the water every day. But if you really know the story, the main thing she wanted to was avoid people, because her life had gotten to a place where she just lived in shame, right? And so Jesus knew this, and what does he do? He's like, hey, why don't you, ask about her husband? And she's like, well, I don't really have a husband. And then he plays the mind reader trick and says, no, actually, you've had 5, and the person you're living with now isn't. And you're familiar with the story, and it proceeds and goes, And this encounter with Jesus flips it up so much so that the lady who was trying to avoid everybody, her response was what? I got to go tell everybody about this. Don't lose sight of how supernatural that is, right? And that's what she does, and then the disciples come back. So you kind of know the story. I got a couple of things I want to focus on that maybe will help us into the teaching here. The first thing I'll tell you, there's no greater place to say this than a room like this, is you don't always know what we're dealing with. When you see that student that you're working with, when you see that child that you're working with, the behavior is not always a reflection of what's going on the inside. It might be something they use to keep distance. It might be something they use like this lady did. She didn't want to go there in the middle of the day because she just enjoyed the heat so much, right? What you saw wasn't what you get necessarily. So I would encourage you really not to base everything on what you see when it comes to the people that you work with. Lord, give us spiritual eyes to see what's going on inside. Because I think Jesus did. That's why he asked about her husband, right? Second thing, and this one's key for where we're at now, there will always be distractions. There were a lot of distractions that could have derailed this conversation. Number one, you know what it was, right? You're a Samaritan. I'm a Samaritan. You're a Jew. End of conversation. We had an interesting conversation around our table, and I'll tell you, in youth ministry today, there's a million distractions to pull you away from getting to what's really going on inside their hearts. Oh, you're at church? What do we want to know? What do we want to know? We don't want to know what you think about LGBTQ, on and on, right? We want to know what you feel about political things. You know what those are? Those are distractions to take you away from the love of God. And I'll even go further. I think racism was part of it. Religion was part of it. They're saying, she said, hey, you guys believe you have to worship God here. We believe you worship God here. So there's ways that we can get derailed and get off the meat of the conversation. Judgmental, controversy. There's all kinds of things that can happen to derail. And one that I feel like, I said it at our table, the church that can disagree and love each other is the church that's going to grow through the culture that we're in right now. Because people are dying for it. They're just tired of we can't possibly agree on everything. And culture right now is saying, no, we have to agree on everything. It's impossible. So here's the point I'll make off of that, these distractions. Love always rises above petty distractions or disagreements. Jesus went right past that, didn't he? And he asked about what was going on. Number 3, we all do this. We fix eternal problems with temporary solutions. Your kids, your students, your families, you, me, we all try to fix eternal problems with temporary solutions, right? We know the ones, and we're easy to point them out, the ones that we don't use, right? Like, she obviously was trying to fix this problem with relationships with men, right? She married 5 times and was living with the guy. She's like, well, maybe this will finally do what I thought it might do. Temporary solutions never fix eternal problems, right? It's why Jesus was talking about what? Living water. Kids do it, right? Why do they chase after the things they chase after? It's a temporary solution. And I'll even go as far to say this. Sometimes the solutions we offer in the church can be temporary solutions to an eternal problem. I won't talk about your church. I'll talk about what I grew up in. Behavior was the one. If I behaved well, then God would love me. That's a temporary solution to an eternal problem. I can't ever behave well enough to earn God's love, right? Because what did he do? He gave it freely to me. I can't earn it. It's a gift. And so in her case, it was the water, right? He pointed that out. The disciples came back, and what did they say? Jesus, you need to eat. And what a frustrating friend he could be at times, right? He hadn't eaten. And what does he say? He's like, oh, I have food you don't even know of. And they're like, because they're used to being dumb, right? Like in the stories, that's just kind of how it went. And he's obviously talking in terms of chess, and they're playing checkers. You know how that goes. So anyways, here's the deal. With your kids and with students, with families, these temporary solutions, it will never, ever, ever be enough. Every other temporary solution, right? Money. You know anybody who has enough money? You know who people say that they do? It's people talking about other people's money. That person has enough money. But if you go to that person, you know what they'll say? Not really. That person over there has enough money. Right? It's all of these things that we talk about. It's never enough. There's only one thing that is enough. And until we know that, it's going to be difficult to reproduce that in the next generation. So, it doesn't have to be this way, is what we need to say. It doesn't have to be this way. You don't have to be ashamed to come out to the well. You could have water that will last forever. And what did she say? Well, who wouldn't want this? Sign me up, right? She's like, yes. And that's what I think the gospel is. I think if we really adequately express the gospel to people, they don't have to be coerced or convinced of it. They're like, thank God, yes. I mean, who wouldn't want this great news? And that's what happens in this case. Do you really mean that her shame could be gone? Do you really mean that this could be never-ending, full, overflowing? 3 more things I'll say quickly. Number 4, our teammates don't always get it. Jesus' disciples. We're not talking about just casual. We're talking about the disciples came back, and their first response was almost, I'll insert this, but they're like, ooh, why were you talking to her? Right? We don't always get it. And sometimes we're the teammate who doesn't quite get it, right? I don't know if you're like me, but there have been some things that I've been late to the game on a few times. Like, I used to think this way, and life has helped me to see differently, see people differently. You know, this situation was filled with racism, with sexism, with elitism, with judgment, right? All the things that today you wouldn't even get past the first sentence in today's culture. Jesus puts this here for us to see. Number 5, and I love this, encounters with Jesus change things. The lady encountered Jesus, the real deal, and it changed things. It wasn't gradual. It was like I'm avoiding people at all costs to I'm going to find as many people as I can to tell them, you've got to come see this for yourself. Do you feel that rising up inside you like it is me right now? I'm going, that's what the next generation needs, is not more information. They need an encounter with Jesus. And that will change things. Insert. Remember how I said there will be distractions. Our job is to limit the distractions so there can be the encounter. Does that make sense? I hope it does. Okay. And then it moves to this famous passage, part of the passage where it says, look at the fields are white unto harvest, right? This is what comes right after this conversation. And this, growing up in a farming community, I mean farming, like Red River Valley, you know, wouldn't waste that land on animals. You grow crops there. That's the deal. So I know what it is, the seasons of planting, the seasons of harvest. I've done all that stuff. What I love about the kingdom of God is we're in perpetual harvest. That's what this is saying here. He's saying sometimes it's sowing time, sometimes reaping. You know what that means? Sowing's been happening all this time, so you know what? We are always in this time of reaping. We still have to sow, don't get me wrong. But there's always opportunity. The Spirit is working. It's whether or not we're aware and we work with the Spirit in this. And so I look at this whole thing and I'm like, our job is to introduce people to Jesus so they can have the encounter. And when that happens and we're working with the Holy Spirit, it will be real and it will be something that can be built upon. So I guess the last, what does this look for us? I hope that you're sensing what I'm saying in this as an encouragement to what you're already doing, but looking at your interactions with kids and students and families and going, are we getting sidetracked by distractions, by disagreements, when we're just maybe 10 minutes away from having a conversation that gets to the core of saying, hey, maybe that temporary solution will be uncovered and the gospel can come in and Jesus can actually transform a life. And I think that's what we're all in this for. So how does this help us? What does this help us to do? First of all, us personally, we got to stop trying to fix eternal problems with temporary solutions ourselves. You know, it's pretty hard, right? If I'm the person at the well with my temporary solutions, it's hard to go to these kids that we work with and go, but for you, this is what you, right? I mean, I don't know. I know that has never been the case for me. So first that has to happen for us. What is Jesus asking me about that has prevented me from having that living water? I wish that were a one-time thing. It would have been so great because I grew up in a Christian home, a missionary home. Like, so cool if that would have happened one time when I was a kid, and it's just been, I haven't ever tried another temporary solution. You know, I haven't had a thing that I've had to go, we have to wrestle those down. We have to deal with distractions and point towards encounters, and then we go tell others. And then we move to the others, and we have to see what distractions are keeping me from seeing what is right in front of me. And this is a child in the image of God who's trying to connect with their Creator. And yes, I work at Spencer Lake for my whole summers basically there. So trust me, I know what you see. I'm not saying I have it any better or any worse. I see thousands of kids, and so I see kids that would try to make me feel like this is the most miserable week of their life, and nobody loves, the Eeyore kids that come around, and it's never had a good day, or, I see it all. But what I know to be true is inside there's something else going on. And going back to my story, I would tell you, had I not had a coach to do that, I probably would have quit basketball and never realized that person I thought I could be inside with something as silly as basketball. But our kids are wrestling things like, man, my parents got a divorce, and I don't think anybody loves me. And ironically, sometimes when people feel that way, they don't act more lovable, they act less lovable, right? So I'm talking to a room going, man, we got to know, we got to see through the distractions to the heart to connect them to Christ, right? And then we have to take time for others. We have to confront and care, and then we need to lead them to the eternal solutions. And right before I pray, I hope I didn't go too. I'm okay. Okay. There's so much in my heart here that I'm trying to just grab whatever you can, take it with you, and I know that this is a great church that will help you. But I will say, the fruition of this, I'll give one last story, and it's actually, we were youth pastors in Racine, and we were there for 7 years, and there's this family in the church who was just a core family, board member, missions board, just great, great people of God, and they had 3 boys. The oldest boy was a nationally ranked Bible quizzer, straight A student. The youngest boy, also straight A's, black belt in karate. And then there was Eric. He's the middle child, right? And Eric was great with like mechanical things, but probably a straight C or D student, maybe not so straight, very up and down, and just surrounded by achievers and really struggled with dad, who was high drive, a lot of things. And I was his youth pastor. And I remember when he was a kid, he was just like, I swear to you, I had this conversation. I said, Eric, I know you're not trying to find trouble, but I can tell you wherever trouble is, it just has a lock on you. For some reason, you could be walking in a place where nobody is, and something's going to happen over there that you're going to get in trouble over. I had this talk with him. I'm like, I'm not mad at you. I'm just surprised one kid can get in these many situations. Really, he just had the worst luck in the world. And it was great when he was younger because it was kind of funny. As he got older, he got a license, and then those distractions became different. And I'll remember one time he would come into he would want to make sure that leaders saw him smoking in the parking lot, and I'm like, for whatever reason, I had this patience with him that maybe a lot of other people didn't. And I remember a conversation. I said, I'm just not going to get mad at you, dude. I love you. And that was not my approach to most kids. I don't want you to think, oh, this guy's just got, I'm not that guy. I'm usually like, hey, get it together, man. Not with Eric. Anyways, ends up, short story being longer. He ends up joined in the military, and he goes overseas, and we're real worried. Mom and Dad are worried. He's whatever. Well, he comes home after his first tour, I believe it was. I don't remember exact details. And he meets this girl, and he brings her to youth group, and she gets saved. And this was not part of his plan at all. Not at all. So he loves this girl, and all of a sudden she's growing in the Lord, and it's not going the way he wanted, but he's in love with her. And so he comes, and he's like, he wants to marry this girl. And this is where Mom comes in the story. They're having stress between Dad and Eric, and Mom comes in and just begging him, will you please get married in the church? I don't know if you've ever been in these family, I'm telling you about real life family stuff here. And so he says, well, I'll get married in the church if Steve does the wedding. Now that's not this badge that I'm trying to put out. I don't want any of that. I just will tell you that there were plenty of options for me to take the exit ramp on the distractions, right? He gave them to me sometimes weekly. So then I get in this position where this girl's dad isn't so excited about what's going on. As you maybe imagine, right? Just got saved, they're getting married at like 19. He's going overseas and all these different things. And he's like I wish I could make it up. He offered me money to not do their wedding, And I'm like, usually I get not a lot, but I get paid something to do the wedding. This is the first time I've gotten paid to not do the wedding, right? And so we wrestled through a lot of these different things, and I'll just tell you this for this reason is that sad part of the story, a year after their wedding, I did his funeral because he was killed in action overseas. And I don't say this to be, if you know me, there's no manipulation in any of this whatsoever. What I'm telling you that eternal solutions are important for temporary versus the temporary ones, right? The beauty of this story is the day before he was killed by a roadside bomb, he gets time. He calls home, talks to his mom, and says, I just want you to know, Mom, that if anybody ever comes to the door and tells you bad news about me, that I am good with the Lord and I'm in a place where I need to be with him. Like miraculous things that happen that make us feel whatever. My goal in life is for those to become everyday experiences for us, that we would be in a place where if God's asking us to be this person in this story, that we wouldn't allow the distractions to overwhelm and to keep feeding temporary solutions. This has got to be a room that's going to say we're going to provide eternal solutions for that. So I hope I didn't wreck your time, but I will tell you that I will treasure those moments because I remember many moments with him that I'm like, man, I'm just not sure. And there may be some of you in this room that you've got, there's people that come to your mind. That's somebody's child, that's somebody's future spouse, that's somebody's future parent. This is a big, big picture that we get to be a part of. And so I want to pray with you and thank you again for letting me come and ramble on about how much what you do is so important and you can make a difference in the next generation. Thank you for serving. And I know in this time, I believe we're going to pray for. There's a crew from here. Thank you so much going up to Assembly Park. I think some electricians. I know maybe somebody who's working with that at least. But on behalf of, we work with students all summer, and camp is such a big thing. And so what you're doing is making a big difference. We want to pray for that as well. So let me pray for you. God, I thank you for the heart of the people in this room that are coming to give and to serve. God, we want to see as you see. Help us to see those around us through your eyes. First and foremost, God, we would pray that we would get rid of our temporary solutions and just cling to that living water and the bread of life. And you are that, Jesus. Thanks for coming and doing that for us. I pray that you will help us to see the people that we serve and to encourage them and to have wisdom around the distractions they put up in many different ways. But God, that we would see your plan through this. And God, for those that are going up to Assembly Park, we thank you for their willingness to serve, and we pray that they would work well together and that everything would go well, and that, Lord, they would sense a little bit of their connection to what's happening in the lives of students in the summers at that camp for so many years to come. Pray a blessing upon the leadership of this church that's in this room, and that this community would be so much better for having this church in it. We ask all these things in Jesus' name. Amen.
Thank you so much, Steve. I hope you guys all leave feeling encouraged and equipped that what you do really, really matters and that we really appreciate all the effort that you put in. Just the last step. I have some gift cards burning holes in my pockets that must get to you guys. So we have a few raffles of just recognizing each of our different ministries that work with kids. Our first one here is Youth Group, Teen Sunday School, KC Crew, and Miscellaneous, if you did not fit into a category. So the first person who just needed a gift card today would be John Shizzle. He needed a gift card today. Thank you for serving. And then can I have someone from this table select out of our girls' ministry bucket? I'll head over here. Christine Clements. You're welcome. And can I have someone here? Here you go. From Rangers, we want to say thank you to Paul Schneider. Thank you. And would you like to select one from our Junior Kids Nursery and Rainbows classes? Mary Strong. I was like, I think she was way in the back. And then would you like to select from our Kids Church, Kids Corps, Bible Quiz, and Good News Clubs? That is Jim Kulo. And last but not least, we wanted to recognize a few people who have served at Christian Life the longest in our kids and youth ministries. And I must say, you had to have been here longer than I've been alive to win this prize. And so we actually had a three-way tie of 3 people who have served in kids and youth ministries for over 30 years. We have Bob Starch, Randy Messon, and Jerry Krebsbach. And Bob. Thank you guys for coming. I think I spotted some more dessert out there. I'm not positive. But please enjoy, spend some time, and thank you for all that you guys do. Bingo was purely for your enjoyment. So if you want to keep filling it out and keep talking to people, feel free, but you can also take that home with you if you want.